All right, I am super excited about this week's guest. This week's guest is an author. She's a teacher. She's a fashionista, which we'll talk about that soon as well. Um, this week, you are just going to be blown away by the wisdom and the cute Northeastern accent that you're going to be hearing. You're not going to have to just listen to my boring Midwestern draw, throwing the words pop and a around. Today, you get to hear some wisdom from Rhode Island from our guest, the author of Educate the Heart, screen-free activities for grades pre-K through 6 to inspire authentic learning, or as I simply call it, a cookbook for real learning. I am super excited to have Jennifer with us today. So Jennifer, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Absolutely. I don't think you're nearly as excited as I am.
I am. I'm excited.
You and I have been connecting now for, I don't know, it feels like years, but I'm sure it's only been 6, 7, 8 months or so now through social media, and really connecting almost every single day, I feel. And I feel like I know a lot about you, but I can guarantee we've got listeners out here today that don't know much about you. So if you could just take a minute, introduce yourself, tell us what you do, where you're from, and just whatever else you want to share, and then we'll jump right in.
Sure. So I am Jennifer Quattrucci, and I've been a teacher for 23 years in Providence, Rhode Island. And I taught kindergarten for 22 years. Growing up, I always wanted to be a kindergarten teacher.
All right, I got to stop right there. Kindergarten. I love that. Kindergarten. Go ahead with your kindergarten self.
So I wanted to teach, but I specifically wanted to teach young children. And I studied early childhood in elementary and college, but something about kindergarten I just loved so much. And just about the hands-on, the way that they're so curious, the stories to introduce them to that they've never been introduced to before, all of those activities. And I want to say fun, but so much more than fun, so much learning involved, letting the kids be kids at their own pace. Way back in college with the big buzzword, this is going back, 23 years ago, even longer than that, developmentally appropriate practices. And that has clung to me all through these years. The Rhode Island early childhood standards, just good basic sense. Even, as for teaching, and now that I'm a mom, I have a 13-year-old and I have a 9-year-old. Those things that I learned back then, and made me so excited to teach. It seems like they had fallen through the wayside. And a lot of it, I think, is the big push with the technology. But anyway, all through the years, and I don't want to say anything bad about the technology itself, because it is how it's used or abused. And this book is not a book about anti-device. It's a book about other experiences. That's what it is, an alternative. So, the idea of a curriculum that makes the social and emotional learning needs of students a priority and ensures that all children are taught to think critically, collaborate effectively, communicate respectfully, and express themselves creatively has always been my vision. And in a world now where children are rushed from place to place, often occupied by devices, we as educators and parents, we can create an environment where they're given time. We need to create an environment, better experiences, where they're given the time and allowed to focus and think, create, learn, and be bored. Children, they need to be bored to find out really what interests them and act on that.
So let me pause you right there, because I've got some things I want to ask you, but I just want to make sure that we're clarifying for the audience. Yeah. You didn't write an entire book about how to bore our kids, did you?
No, absolutely
okay.
not. Absolutely not. No. So when I say that children need to be bored, and I actually did a podcast episode about this back in the spring. I mean that they need to have the open-ended experiences that they can take and make them their own. Not even so much create, but more innovate. So both create and innovate. But I mean, not like following step-by-step directions, but taking it, making their own plan. For example, in a STEM challenge, one chapter in the book has 15 collaborative STEM challenges. And those STEM challenges are not, follow these directions, and let's do this and make this work. It's how can you make this happen?
Yeah.
What do you think? And you're making a plan, and you're revising, and you're revising again, and you're reflecting, and you're trying so many different things until you're happy with the results. You're doing that on your own, and the children are communicating with each other. So it's not about, okay, give them these things and have them do nothing. It's really the opposite, is keep them engaged in what they're interested in. Let them find what they're interested in. Make it, engaging for them. Give them okay, so their friends, their peers in their classroom. When they're on screens, they're with the screen, they're doing, whatever, but they're not using such an asset, which is a friend, another person that they can learn from and communicate with. They're not just learning the social skills, which is important, not just learning that whole give and take, how to talk, and how to be respectful and listen to others' ideas, but to actually learn from each other, learn from their idea and add to their ideas, learn from each other. And if we don't give the children the opportunities to work together and be cooperative and collaborate, we're missing out on a wealth of experiences. So a lot of the activities are collaborative. I'm sorry, I keep on
you're
talking.
good.
Yeah, so a lot of the activities are collaborative activities, and they rely on the children learning to work together. But what I really wanted to do is, I didn't want a book of just theory. Like, I didn't want to just talk about, this is how you do a STEM challenge.
Sure.
Now do them. And I didn't want to talk about, this is why we need to will work with community, and that's it. And I didn't want to talk about, for cooking, why we should cook with kids. Even though I have a chapter in the book about cooking, I have all of the background information, the rationale, the research, and then I give you the activities. So there's 180 ideas and activities, but within each chapter, there's a lot of meat in there that explains, why they're important to do, and the whole process, the rules that the children can follow, how to help them to have a growth mindset. Like, people talk all the time about, let the children have a growth mindset and encourage them to embrace the but how do you do that? And I show that, and as you saw in the book, I show that step by step. How can we teach them that needs to be taught? They're not going to just be like, okay, I'll have a growth mindset now. It all needs to be taught, and you can teach it kindly and nicely and have patience with them. But the point is that, there's so much there that can be taught and not just, ignored.
So good. So I love just listening to you talk right now. Not only because of that cute Northeastern accent, but it's like this is yet another one of your babies, this book. I mean, it's it so well, and you want to make sure that everybody that comes around it knows all the beauty and sees all the beauty that you see. I just love hearing that passion and that enthusiasm from you. And as you're talking, I'm sitting here writing down lots of notes and things that I want to ask you about. I was lucky enough to get a copy of this book, and I think, as we're recording this, I think today is official release day for the book. So those people that are listening, it's out there. Feel free to check it out wherever you get your books. But I have a copy in my hands already, and there's so much in it, and I'll dive into that in a second. But one of the things that at first captured my attention is just your name on the book. And I don't know if there's anything to this or not, but even your introduction today, you mentioned your middle name, Lee. You make a point to point out your middle name. Is there any story behind that, or is that just a Northeastern formality I'm not familiar with?
No, there's absolutely not even any story whatsoever.
Then make something up. Come on, this is good.
Yeah, like I guess I just like my middle name,
That's awesome.
And yeah, there's really no story whatsoever. It was just my name. When I was young, my father especially would always correct people if they called me anything other than Jennifer. Like, he never was like, she's Jennifer Lee, like, not like that, but always like Jennifer, not Jen.
Okay.
So people now sometimes ask me, well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer Jen? Do you prefer Jennifer, Jenny? And they even say, do you have one N or two N's when they call you Jen? I'm like, I really don't care whatsoever. Call me Jen, Jennifer. It never makes a difference to me, whatever, but at all. But formal, when I was growing up, I would just put Jennifer, and then like you learn, when you learn to do handwriting and you learn cursive and all that, I would put Jennifer L.
Okay.
CC was my maiden name, CECE, Jennifer L. CC. I don't know. And then when when I was young, I would try different variations, and like obviously not legally because I think I was like 8, but I would be like, I want to be Jenny Lee, or and I would just add it that way. But
That's
when
awesome.
I was doing my social media, I just included it just there. That's my, I don't, it's just my name, Dave. It's just my name. I don't know.
I hear you.
I guess the answer is I like it.
Okay, so that's fair enough. That's fair enough. But you know what? The fact that you use that in all of your like everything that I see.
Yeah, because you
Makes me
see
like
it
you're a
on
Bible.
my book,
Not that
and
yeah,
on Instagram, even though I'm mommy teacher fashionista on Instagram, I include the whole name on my account.
yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, that's actually the segue I was going there. So well done. It's almost like this is planned, but it's not. I want to talk about that. The fact that on your social media, you don't necessarily use your first, middle, and last name as your handle. You are mommy teacher fashionista,
Yeah.
which is so cool. But I'm curious if you can describe where that comes from a little bit.
Of course, sure. So about 5 years, I was never on any social media. Like I never paid any mind to it. And I see people on Facebook, they'll come up and they'll share like a memory from 9 years ago. I'm like, oh my goodness, was even Facebook on 9 years ago? Because it's like all new to me. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I moved from like a rotary phone to like an iPhone. It was like a huge big deal, and I was just a kindergarten teacher and a wife, and I
Okay,
had
I'm
my
going to
children.
stop you right there. There's no such
Yep.
thing as just a kindergarten teacher. A kindergarten teacher,
Okay. I was
the hardest job.
well. Okay.
So
Well, my
here we are.
kids were okay. So my daughter's 13, so she was about 7, and my son was 3, and I don't, I guess because I had to get a phone because, rotary, it wasn't like cool to have like a rotary phone, pull it out of your pocketbook,
Yeah,
whatever. I
yeah.
needed something. And people were telling me, and I know what it was. It was, I had joined the PTO at my school at Harry Kazarian, and I wanted to share information with parents. And through PTO Today, through that organization, they recommended Twitter.
Okay.
I started off with a Twitter account, and I just put, at Jen Quattrucci. And then somebody introduced me to Instagram. And I was like, oh, how cool pictures. And I put pictures of my kids because, they're
Yeah,
so cute. And like,
absolutely.
my first picture, I think, was a picture of grilled lobsters. And then after that was a picture of my kids at Niagara Falls. And it was just, that. And then I noticed on Instagram, and it was Jen Quattrucci on Instagram. And then I noticed
Oh,
from Instagram,
Jen? It was Jen?
it was Jen. It was
Oh my
Jen
goodness.
Quattrucci. Yeah, I
I'm
don't know.
assuming your dad's not on social media because he would have had a fit if you just went by Jen. Jennifer.
He is now, but
Okay.
he ignored me for some reason on social media. I can't,
Because he was saying, I don't know who this
understand.
Jen is. So yeah.
I don't understand, right? But that's like a whole other issue for like a whole other show.
Okay.
But so so on Instagram, I was Jen Quattrucci, and then I noticed I was following some teachers, just random teachers, because you see them, it shows you, search for hashtags,
Hmm.
and a lot of them were showing outfits of the day. They would be in front of their mirror, and they would show themselves in their outfit. And I love clothes and I love fashion, so I started to do that, and it was just fun. And then companies through like maybe after I don't know how many months or maybe a year after that, companies, the first one that did this was a company called ThreadUp,
Hmm.
and they sell used clothes online.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they I had a contract with them where they would send me clothes, and they would give me a certain amount and a budget, and I would wear the clothes and tag them. But then it was different companies, Aventura clothing, and just I did a lot of work with Shein. Then I did work with Lancome. Just little by little, people
Oh,
would send me stuff, and I would share it, and it got to be kind of like more like fashion. So, but in between through the years, that's to make the long story short. it ended up, my name changed from Jen Quattrucci to then it changed to, so I think it was Love, Life, Shine Bright. It was something like that. That didn't
Okay.
really mean anything. It's just like, you know how I am. I'm like so positive all the time. But then I just came up with Mommy Teacher Fashionista because it was fashion and
Mm.
it was still my mommy stuff and it was still like classroom ideas, you know, like my
Yeah.
bulletin boards and things like that, just like cute moments in the classroom. So that the name got changed quickly from Jen Quattrucci to something Shine Bright, Love Life to Mommy Teacher Fashionista. Now, in January, that account got hacked and I was actually extorted. I don't know if you know that because I don't know if we connected before or after that, but my account was Mommy Teacher Fashionista. But then one day I started to get all these emails and they were like, we have your account and we need money. And I told my husband, I'm like, look at this. This is my Instagram account. And I was up to like 70,000 followers. But I wasn't doing the fashion anymore. I took a big break from that. So I didn't have any posts that I had to do. Like if I had things that I was scheduled to do that I was
Yeah.
actually getting paid for, I would have been in serious trouble. But and these people were like, send this money, and then they were lowering the price. And I told my husband, and we called the cops. It was like a big deal because you know they kept
Mhm.
extorting. And but anyway, I don't know how it happened because I do have the two-factor authorization. Well, I can't say that word. Authorization. I want to say, but it's authentic something.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I do have that, but I don't know if how I missed that. But then they kept changing the name because I couldn't report it because they kept changing the name. But the good thing about they kept changing the name is my name was available. So I kind of stressed about this for a couple of days and I said, you know what, this is just Instagram. Like, who cares? Like, this isn't even me anymore. I don't work for Shein anymore. I'm not, doing these pictures, wearing these clothes. I have nothing I have to do, nothing I'm being paid to. And now I'm writing a book and I was writing a book. I was in the middle of writing of the book. And I remember I was sitting at my computer writing my book, and this email came in about your Instagram. I'm like, this is my Instagram. I told my husband, and like, I'm busy writing the book. And I remember he had gone to his friends to watch football that night, and he was trying to have his friends help him, and they were all like Googling things and how to do. And he's like, I know what to do. I know how to get your account back, and nothing worked. But because they kept changing the name, I said, just forget it. Like I did, of course, at some point, Instagram did um, they didn't actually respond directly, but I did notice a huge jump in some of my old following, but it didn't matter because
Yeah.
it's not the same anyway. Like those people, they probably don't care anymore. I'm not that same person that
Not
was
doing the same thing. Yeah.
constantly the fashion. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I started over in January.
Okay.
And so it's the same name, so which is cool. And but what I like about it is I was able to start fresh, and I did do some of the old fashioned things that I liked because I'd like to dress up. And I did post some of those, and I did just recently do something with a shirt from Inspire Kind Acts for that company. Just it wasn't anything, formal, but they sent me a shirt, and they sent my son a shirt, and we put the shirts on, and we did some pictures, and I put, I
Yeah.
wouldn't. That was, not a big deal. So I do have a little bit of fashion in there, but mostly it's as you can see, my big focus has been more the teaching and the mommy rather than the fashionista part. But my name is still Mommy Teacher Fashionista because that's still all me.
That's
You know?
awesome. It's so good, and it's almost like this has been just this giant built-in segue because there are two big points I want to try to bring up and bring together. I don't know if they are married together, if we need to separate them out, but so the concept of your book is basically going screen free, and again, not disparaging or knocking down technology and the ability to have screens and utilize those in our lives and our kids' lives, but at the same time, you are so proficient and prolific online and through social media. And again, it's how we connected and how you connected with so many other educators. I think about like Brian Mindler and Brian Aspinall and all these other people out there that are so big and powerful and knowledgeable in our field of education. and technology is what helped bring us together. So,
Mhm.
talk a little bit about how, as maybe a parent of a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old, because I'm a dad of 4 kids. My oldest is 13. My youngest is 4, so I cover that that age range as well. And I have that constant battle with my kids, trying to get them to turn off their devices, whether it's before bed or in the morning. So my littlest one will wake up first thing in the morning and come charging in my room saying, "Daddy, can I use your phone?" Just because he wants to watch YouTube. And
Right.
it's like this constant struggle. But yet, in my own world, in my own life, I utilize screens and technology all the time. So, can you just talk a little bit about how those things reconcile themselves? As adults,
Mhm.
we have grown to depend on technology and screens so much, and yet with kids, we know the impact it can have if they're not quite ready for it, and why your book is so important.
Yeah, so I feel that it does definitely, it is constant. It is a constant thing that we need to teach them. Like you say, even as ourselves, we have we're like right now we're doing this and I have my phone on and I'm talking to you and we're connecting and we're online. But here's the thing. It's the technology. It's 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 how you use it. It's not the technology that there's anything it's not. And my son, he always he actually reads my book a lot, and he'll like randomly like look through the chapters and he'll like do a screen free activity, and he's like, "Mom, I'm doing one of your screen free activities." And he'll make one of them, he's making a comic book about his life, and he especially loves the homework chapter because those activities are so open ended.
Yeah,
And he says it sometimes like screen free, like it's like, and I know because he's proud of me, and he wants that, like he wants that like praise from me. Oh, good, screen free. But I teach him it's not screens are not bad. It's not, the technology is not bad, and something doesn't make it better just because you're not doing it on a screen. Like
yeah,
these activities are not what I consider awesome. Obviously I do, because I've created them and I've chosen these. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I say there's 180 ideas, but you know what, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of things that you can do to teach, but I chose these specific 15 for each chapter very, very carefully. So it's not just because that they're not on the screen that makes them awesome. It's because of what it's encouraging the children to do, to think critically and to
yeah,
collaborate and to be creative. It's because of the engaging nature. They're based on literature. They're based on more than 200 books, which you can get at the library.
yeah, yeah,
And very, very little materials are needed for any of the activities. Now, as far as the what we try with our children, and what we've just had this conversation last night. We went to dinner, and we were at a restaurant, and my daughter is awesome. She's 13 and she's awesome, and she loves to talk to her friend on the phone, and they have the group text, and she loves it. She's 13, and we're happy for her that she has good friends that she has good conversations with, and that they entertain each other, and they learn from each other. However, when you're at a restaurant, you don't use it. It's not say one more thing and put it away. It's not have it out just in case someone has something to say. It's that is not the time for it. So it's like everybody knows it's balanced, but we have to teach them, and you may have to teach them every day until they can kind of internalize it and figure it out for themselves. But just the way we're teaching them to love literature, and we're teaching them the elements of a story, character and setting and problems. We're teaching them a math problem and different ways to solve different problems. The same way we're teaching that, we teach them about how to be a little bit savvy about your devices. If you're going to give your child, we just gave our daughter a phone in December when she turned 13, then that comes with it. It's not just like, here you go, okay, now you're using it too much. It's that goes with it, her herself having to figure out a balance, and then us having to constantly remind them of what's appropriate, what's not.
yeah,
So as far as me using the social media as it's true. Honestly, when I was doing the fashion blogging and the teaching, it was getting to be a lot. Like, luckily, my father is actually a photographer, so
huh,
he would do all my pictures. So
okay,
I would get So I remember one time a couple of years ago, we went to Florida and I came back. We had to have all our packages held. I came back to all these dresses and watches and just different things I had to do, some things from Sephora and photograph, and having my dad, can you come over at this time and we're going to do 5 outfits or we're going to do 7 outfits. And then I have to take a picture of this and that. Like, okay. And he comes and we go in my backyard and do it. So it was very like, very, very, that's all we did. The pictures that you see that are all outside, those are just my backyard.
Okay.
But at that time, it was too much, like to have to be in Florida in Disney World with your family and then thinking about these packages and having to worry about how to take them. Like, I feel like I learned the hard way that like this is too much.
Yeah.
And little by little I backed off until I had no more contracts and I was focused more on, not doing that. But my passions with teaching and education and seeing people out there connecting, sharing the ideas, kind of brought me back into it. So my Instagram account was actually not even used for months. And it's actually the teaching that brought me back to posting on it again. So, and Brian was one of the first ones, you saw he wrote the foreword.
Yes.
He was one of the first ones that I was just intrigued by how he's going into the classroom and teaching coding. And his first book, Code Breaker, and now Block Breaker, they're different books, because it's not just all like, oh, here's what I did and oh, here's a quote and here's some good inspirational ideas. This is good practical stuff, and it makes you feel like, okay, like this is exciting.
I can do this. Yeah.
Yeah, this is how children learn. But then the energy, but then that wouldn't be enough. Like if he just had his book out and on the stores, people would find it and read it and love it. But it's him who's, when you see him in the classroom and when you hear the passion in his voice and you see the interaction of the children, it brings it to life. And it shows you that, yeah, this is awesome and you can do this. So he was one of the first ones. But then, there's of course you and Brian Mendler with his, and I used 2 of his quotes on my discipline chapter, the behavior management with a growth mindset.
Right.
I actually, it's the only chapter where I have a beginning quote and an ending quote from the same person, and actually the only quotes that are from people who I know, although I never met him in real life, but who I like.
He's amazing.
Yeah, but like it's the same thing, right? Like we all know each other, but it's because the quotes themselves are just, they're so powerful. And he what he says, it makes so much sense, but yet it's not happening. It doesn't seem like when you're in that moment, in it doesn't seem like it, but if you pay attention, it does. Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the chapter that is devoted is 15 ways to promote a growth mindset in behavior management, like helping kids to behave without using, and I hate to say it because I know some people really love them, but I'm going to say it because I really, really, really feel that there are so many better ways to teach children to behave than sticker charts and the moving the clothespins and changing the color. Now, I mean, I know just from a mom's point of view, when my daughter was little in kindergarten, she always was like one of those kids who just always behave, always behave, always behave. And I remember the teacher saying, she never talks, she's so quiet. And they actually thought, well, I think she has a speech problem. And my daughter was like, no, I just don't want to get in trouble. Like she says not to talk. And she, and then, but how is that helping if you're worried about then the teacher's going to flip your color if you talk, and then it's going to, some kids are really, really bothered by that. And then other kids like my son, who's a lot more mischievous and he's more willing, he's more like, he's willing to stretch the boundaries of behavior because he's silly. Like he's a nice kid, but he's silly, and he likes to fool around. And now for someone like him, I don't think it would matter, like the flipping it's like, okay, so you flip my color, you know what I mean? So it's like, when does that work, and why does the whole class? And I know that everyone has seen this quote on Facebook, and I'm not sure if I don't think it's Brian's, but somebody else made this little image where and I forget, I think it might be that principal. Who's that principal? And I'm forgetting his name. He does talks. He's not, I don't really know him very well. I've talked to him a few times.
Tell me the quote. We'll go from the end. See what I can.
Yeah, it's about it's about at a teacher's meeting, I'm gonna have everyone's name, and every time the teacher talks like
Well, that's
that.
funny. Guess who that
Yeah,
guy is? That's me.
yeah. Oh, that's so funny, right? Right. So
Yeah, at my next staff meeting, I'm going to have a clip chart for my teachers, and the first person that speaks out is going to get their clip moved. Absolutely.
yeah, but do you see how? But see,
Right. If it's
and
not good
that's
enough
how
for
I feel.
teachers, why is it good enough for kids?
Yeah, and exactly. And the thing is that that's our job to, and it's easy. Of course, it's easy for me to say. I'm sitting here in my kitchen to say, well, teach them the right behavior when the kid has done like the same thing like 75 times, and you're
Right,
just
right.
like, how many? But here's the thing: is like it is our job. It is our job to teach and to model the behavior. You can't just come in and expect them. They know the rules of the school
Right.
and they know the classroom. So as hard as it is, if you're a classroom teacher, it is your job to teach that. See, my thing is like you have to teach the behaviors that are desirable for
Mhm.
them for their own good. So
Right.
they will feel proud of themselves, and they will be their best selves, and they will do their best learning. But it does have to be taught. They don't know, they don't really know exactly what to do and how to express themselves unless you help them.
That's so good. And one of the big things that I've been really fixated on lately is the idea of teaching skills versus content.
Yep.
Um, the idea of college and career readiness. Um, I think we oftentimes distort, and we say that we need to fill our kids' heads with so much content so that they can go out there and be ready to succeed in the real world. But we all know that the content that we learn in our jobs from our on-the-job training far surpasses any of the knowledge that we got prior to that. There's a reason as educators, for example, teachers with more experience tend to get paid more because we believe that with time and with messing up quite a bit and learning from your mistakes, that you get better and better and better at your job. There's not a single teacher out there that graduates college or graduates high school with all of the knowledge needed to go out there and be extremely masterful. You have to learn it. But it's the skills of persistence, it's the skills of overcoming, it's the skills of having grace and humility and having real conversations with people and all of those skills that set people up for success. So I love how you talk about the idea that we need to teach those skills. I would argue we need to teach those skills before we teach all the other things. We use content to teach the skills that matter most. But again, that's for yet another podcast, another day. Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the final things I've got literally, I know those of you out there can't see what I've got right now, but I'm just sitting here feverishly taking notes because there's so much I want to jump into. Maybe, Jennifer, you and I can sit down and do a part 2 of this at some point.
Yeah, sure.
But I've got so many questions I want to ask. Well, I guess one of the last things I want to ask for this episode is, so your book it's filled with activities and it's filled with, like I said, recipes for success. I love how I just went through, and as I was looking at this yesterday and this morning specifically, I was looking at all of the activities, and you've got a list of resources needed and the steps for the activities. But then you begin with students can choose, or students should be given the opportunity to. You don't say this is how it needs to be done. It's almost all open-ended. You give the framework, and then you say, but you can kind of tweak this and make it customized for kids, which is awesome. Love that. But the question I really have, going back to just the title, the cover of the book. We covered your name, which actually it was a great little story about your name, which I love. But the title is Educate the Heart, but yet it's filled with screen-free activities. So
Yep.
I'm curious where that title came from, and why you think it's important to educate the heart.
The title comes from Aristotle's quote, which in education that just I'm going to say it wrong, but when you're just teaching the mind and you're not teaching the heart,
Right.
it's not an education at all.
Yeah.
That's where it starts from. That's where educate the heart.
Yeah.
So the social emotional.
I'll read the quote for you if that's okay. It's at the very beginning.
It's in the introduction. Right?
Yep. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all.
Right.
Which absolutely. So go into that a little bit more. How does all of this help us educate the heart of kids?
Yep. Right. Because the idea is, because the activities give them the freedom to learn at their own pace,
Yeah.
and to think, and to be creative, and to be introduced to engaging activities that they can, like I keep saying, to do at their own pace. Because growing up, we know, is a journey, not a race. It's based on, the activities can be taken from where they're at. It's not like, well, the child needs to have this much, these skills, and then those skills, and then they can do this. Basically, wherever they're at, they can take it and make it their own. So
Yeah.
children, they need to feel loved before they can learn. These activities, because of the nature of them, because they're child friendly, because they're based on beautiful children's literature, because they're developmentally appropriately, and they don't involve any worksheets, obviously no screen time, but they're not worksheets. They're very hands-on activities. Because of that, it's getting them to love school.
That's it.
And if they love school and they feel that these activities are keeping them engaged and wanting to learn more and growing on their own, then like, what more can we do for them? They love school. They love to learn. And like you said, the content is there. The content is worked in. Like, I have one chapter on the physical movement activities, is all based on different kinds of content that you could either use or switch it out. But they're moving as they're learning,
Right.
and it's based on the content. So it's not that I'm ignoring the content. There's content galore, like in like
Yeah.
every chapter, the stories and the themes and the different concepts. But the thing that makes them all cater to educating the heart is that it keeps their needs first. It
Right.
makes sure they're comfortable, like the chapter on flexible seating. If they're not comfortable, they're not happy. If they're not happy, they're not going to be their best selves. They're not going to learn as much as they can.
Right. Right.
It's not about getting them in front of you and just throwing all this stuff at them. It's about making the environment theirs
That's so good.
and making them feel that they can achieve.
Yeah, and it's not about just being fluff and soft. I think a lot of us have seen the social media post of,
Mm-hmm.
kids needs according to Maslow before you can meet their needs according to Bloom's.
Yep.
And that's so real. In my prior job, I worked at an inner city school that had tremendous amounts of poverty, 90% free lunch, and 40% of the kids had at least one parent in jail. And I mean, the needs were just intense. And we came up with policies at my school where we had no homework policies, and teachers were expected to make home visits and phone calls, and we would go out on Fridays just to play in the park. And during Thanksgiving, we were baking turkeys and passing out Christmas presents and all of that, because we really wanted to pour into their needs first. And then when you do that, you can capture their heads. And I think that what you just said there summarized that so much better than I ever did. And it's fun and exciting to hear real educators that are still out there practicing, not necessarily just out on the speaking tour and pontificating from a stage, telling us that we need to do this, but people that are in the trenches, living it and breathing it every single day, saying, no, I see this and I know this works. And kudos to you for stepping up and taking that stand. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So just because I know a lot of the people listening right now are probably getting close to their drive home, or their drive into work, or whatever the case may be. I do want to kind of wrap this up a little bit. Do you have any final words for people? Just if you were trapped in an elevator with somebody for 30 seconds and had 30 seconds to put your sales pitch on for what is needed in education today, what would you say? What would you say that we need to do either differently or that we need to hold on to and magnify?
I think that when we're putting the children first and what they need and what's really, really best for them to grow, and we're giving them the experiences that we all needed as young children, I think that that's the most important thing. I think everything else, if you just keep the best interests of the children in mind, and you're really giving them the best possible experiences and letting them be kids,
Yeah.
letting them learn at their own pace, and remembering that every child is different. What works for one is not going to work for the other. And we should celebrate that, celebrate those differences.
So good. So good. So Jennifer, thank you for joining me today. I know that you are in your last full week of summer, although you're chomping at the bit and want to be in your classroom. I appreciate
Yeah.
the fact that you took some of your time today just to be here with me and to talk and to share. And I'm going to challenge all those listeners out there that to go on Amazon today, right now, when you're listening to this, and just look up Educate the Heart, screen-free activities for grades pre-K through 6 to inspire authentic learning. All you have to do is type in Educate the Heart, and it pops right up. Great, great book, practical. It's filled with, it's research-based. There's lots of amazing strategies in there. Even if you pick it up, buy it, and you just literally just flip through it and stop on some of these bold titles of things. You're like, well, that sounds cool. Let me try that. This isn't a book that you actually have to read from beginning to end, although that's ultimately the goal. You don't have to. There are so many nuggets of wisdom and opportunities for you to just take things and apply them at school and at home. So get yourself a copy today. Sorry, there's my plug for you, Jennifer. So you don't have to necessarily go, but I just, again, I appreciate your time and I appreciate what you're doing every single day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and all that you're doing for everybody in the education world. And I really appreciate your enthusiasm for Educate the Heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you.